What's up, everybody? Charlie Marlow here. Hope you're having a great day, getting ready for Christmas and the holidays. You can see the stockings there as we're getting ready here in the Marlow household. Really good baseball discussion this morning on Hot Take Central on 590 The Fan. Myself, Jimmy the Cat Hayes, Matt Whitener, Nate Lucas, Seth Close also involved, talking all things hot stove, St. Louis Cardinals. At the end, we got to the old Cardinals. Are they the mystery team for Carlos Rodon, according to John Heyman? Carlos Rodon's going to get a ton of money. So we discussed that. But we started with the fact that the Cardinals, do they need a left-handed bat? Do they need to go out and trade for somebody like Brian Reynolds of the Pirates, a Cedric Mullins potentially from the Orioles? Do they have enough of their own left-handed bats and switch hitters? Are you cool with that? That's where we started this conversation. And please, as always, if you get some value from this video, give us a like, give us a subscribe, comment. What do you want the Cardinals to do here? They've already gotten Wilson Contreras. What's the next move for these Cardinals? Here's that discussion, starting with me talking about the Cardinals and the lefty bats they already have.
I think, first of all, with the lineup, they have enough lefties. I know we're all wanting a lefty, and we can get into Brian Reynolds. I think that's an interesting conversation as well. But when you look at these other teams coveting lefty bats, and then you look at what the Cardinals have, I think they have a lot of lefty bats. Now, they're not all proven. Some of them are not proven at all. I'll give you that. But when you look at the fact that you have Donovan, you have Nootbaar, and you have Gorman, lefty bats that are already pretty good in a short time and could be really good. You have two switch hitters in Dylan Carlson and Tommy Edman. I mean, you have five guys who can take ABs from the left side. And I think if you're trying to play the matchup game versus a right-handed pitcher, I don't think the Cardinals would feel bad at all if for that particular game you would bat a Gorman or a Nootbaar fifth. Now, if you're facing a lefty and all of a sudden you're stacking all these righties, because I agree, you could see where 3, 4, 5, 6 if you're stacking a Goldie, Arenado, Contreras, Tyler O'Neill. And so that's not a huge problem until the bullpen comes and all of a sudden you have 3-batter minimum and it's easier to scheme against late in the game. But I don't think that's such a huge issue, and I don't think there are a lot of names out there. So Brian Reynolds, Kat, you brought that up, and I think it's a great option until you start to read articles that the Pittsburgh Pirates, here's the article from clutchpoints.com. Pirates seeking Juan Soto level package in potential Brian Reynolds trade. Now, some of that is negotiation, let's be real. But if the Cardinals didn't make the move for actual Juan Soto, they're not going to throw any type of similar package, even if it's an 80% of the package or 75% of the package for Brian Reynolds. Let's be real.
Brian Reynolds is an all-star outfielder, and he possesses a lot of the things that would really, I think, be a nice final piece for the Cardinals' offseason efforts on an everyday basis, at least. But yeah, we got to be real. He's Pittsburgh Juan Soto. His value to them is that of Juan Soto. In the actual whole of Major League Baseball, that is not his value, and not for one moment do I think that the Pirates will get anything back of that level. But we've also seen some negotiations in the past for some pretty notable guys that are wearing the Cardinal uniform now that started off with some pretty huge packages, and then it became a real thing on the other side. So I think any and everybody's on the table. And I think you're also going to see some changes in trade dynamics now with the even scheduling. You're not going to play a guy as often as you would have in the past because you're just not going to play in division as much. So I think that could open up new pathways like that. But it would be very interesting for me to see if the Cardinals entertain this, and I have no inkling that they're looking into this or if this is even something that they're truly interested in, what that would look like. Because they have a lot of pieces to play with if they tried to engage into the trade market.
So the reason I came up with Reynolds is because I've been saying for weeks I wanted a guy who can give you lefty protection, a real bat who can possibly play in the outfield, and people are like, who? And I'd be like, I don't know. So I started looking at numbers, and that's where I came. So it's not a real thing. It's just conjecture. Mm-hmm. I also want to say I really like Gorman. I really like Nootbaar. I think they're good pieces. I'm not so sure if there's another way to get a guy like Reynolds that wouldn't be a better option for the Cardinals. And I always say this as my backdrop. Like, we're at the point now where you know you got Goldie and you know you got Nolan. Every year we got the corners, and that
you got
to
your
me
catcher.
Makes us, and now we got a catcher. that makes us in a really good place, right? But we're kind of on the clock with Nolan and Goldie now. Like, how many more years, you know? So to me,
it's noon.
right? Okay. So now I'm thinking if there's a time where you're going to go ahead and expend some of those pieces, now's the time I would do it and get that lineup that's like big top to bottom now. So that's the background on that. I don't know I don't think the Pirates are going to get a Soto-type return for Reynolds, but I do think you'd have to give up pieces that could end up as very, very good players, guys that I like and I'm high on here, but you might have to part with them because I think Reynolds is a better fit if that were even a possibility.
All right, text line 855-282-8255. Gino Ojic saying none of the left-handed bats are proven other than Edman, who is a bottom-of-the-order hitter. Scooter in U City. Contreras is extremely likable. Couldn't have had a better intro to the Cardinals and fans. I agree with that. And he's going to be a star here, I think. For a former Cub to come over here, he has done everything right. He's said everything right. That Players Tribune article, what he's said in terms of honoring Yachty, his press conference. Listen, I'm not one of these guys that say, oh, you win the press conference, even though he did. But I'm saying it's all going to be about what he does on the field, how he hits. I did find it funny, and some people crushed me on Twitter. I only brought this up because I thought it was funny. You know how you go to Facebook and you see the Facebook memories? It just happened to be. That was the exact day. It was the exact 6-year anniversary of the exact similar type press conference for one Dexter Fowler. And I don't think it's going to end up like Dexter Fowler at all. I just found that kind of funny.
The Cubs are sending inside agents over. They're plotting and conspiring against us.
Do we have any Contreras sound that we could throw a bite?
Yeah, you want to hear him talking about the Molina?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yadier Molina, we all know who the guy is. The best catcher for the last 2 decades, future Hall of Fame, first ballot. He set the bar really high, and he was my idol. I wouldn't lie about it. I already told him too. But I came here to be Wilson Contreras, and for me it's an honor to succeed a Hall of Famer behind the plate. It's a big responsibility, which I take it, and I know that every time that I step off on the field, I do my 110% to win the day. And off the field, I do my best to help in any way I can the team. But it's an honor. It's an honor to be wearing this uniform and to be succeeding Yadier Molina.
Nice.
Now, Bally's did put out your one-on-one breakout session with Wilson. Do we want to hear some of that, or
If you want to. I mean, we just heard him.
Okay.
My questions are always better. There's no question about that.
I didn't know if there was a particular something.
If you could get the last thing where I said, I think it was my last question. Who are you as a player for folks that might not be aware of Wilson Contreras? If you could cue it up to that, I think that would suffice because I like that one, and maybe that's hubris on my part. I do regional cable journalism at a very high level.
That is absolutely a fact.
Darn skippy that I do it.
Also on the text line, Gino says Matsuzaka Yoshida would have only cost you money and would be your solution at the top of the order and a left-handed bat. He went to the Red Sox. Jobu's Rum, would you guys include Carlson in a package for Reynolds?
Yes.
I would, but I don't think you should have to give up that much more. I mean, Reynolds is very good. You'd have 3 years of control. You're going to face Carlson in the division for a long time. It is the Pirates. I don't think you're ever really worried about the Pirates.
Nah,
But
not really.
I'm not giving up that much more. They would want more than that. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't.
It's all premise, you know.
Right, but I think what the Cardinals
sports talk garbage
are probably going to do, though, I do think because I mentioned they have 5 guys that can stand on the left side of the batter's box. To me, they're going to give those guys a shot. And if you're going to retool for somebody like Reynolds, if he's still around the trade deadline, if you want to make a huge deal and you need a lefty bat, you could trade for a guy and still get 3 postseasons out of him.
Now, Cap, we've got a good thing going. We've got a good relationship, so I don't want you to give me a left jab on the other side of this. But as I look through who's still out there, and if we don't see a top-end guy that you can get, there's a guy that I've just liked that I think might have some upside for a while that could meet the needs of what this roster has, and that's Michael Conforto. You don't have to do a long term with it, but it's a left-handed bat that you can put in there, and it's going to be able to contribute in some way, shape, or form, while still letting the guys that you've got between Newt and hopefully Gorman and guys like that to still get more at-bats and more opportunity.
I get it, and I'd be fine with it. The reason why Reynolds to me is compelling is he can play center, and he had 27 homers last year, 20, I think, from the left side of the plate.
Yeah.
So he can really break up the middle of your order really well. And the reason, like, if I'm the Pirates, I'm just putting myself in their position. If I'm the Pirates, I'm not giving you this guy. If you want this guy, I need two of your guys that are going to be in my starting lineup. You know, I want Yepes and Gorman.
I'd like to be fair. There's several guys on the Cardinals bench who would be in the Pirates starting lineup right now. But do you want our starters or guys that can be starters for them?
And then the other piece of this, like, I think Yepes can be a really good major league hitter. I don't know. He showed flashes of it. But the backdrop with me wanting a guy who can do damage from the left side is because Walker is coming. Like John Mozeliak said, and I hadn't heard him say it before, yeah, he's coming to spring training with an opportunity to make the club. We're going to give him. That's another right-handed bat. Someone's going to get squeezed. At some point, you're going to have too much of that, and you're going to have to shed some pieces.
Well, here's the impetus to me then. If you can't go out and get somebody to come in, Dylan Carlson's got to become the guy you're supposed to be. That's a switch hitter that can play center field that should have that upside of that 25 home run type power. That's what we should have gotten. He's 22. He's 22 years old.
He's young
still.
and he can still get there.
There's so much time for him still to get there. I understand that you need some certainty in the lineup right now because, again, Tyler O'Neill, who knows? Dylan Carlson, you hope. What's going to happen with Newt? Can he continue to build and develop? Maybe.
Gorman?
I don't know. Gorman.
How about Burleson? We haven't even mentioned.
Well, exactly. So but again, all those guys go into the same pot for me right now, where I say it's a lot of maybe in a situation where you need to add some more certainty somewhere because the time is a ticking on your 30-year-old catcher you just signed, your pair of MVP candidates you've got on the cornerstone, just biologically there. So you got to do what you got to do. And you got to make an impact if you're going to continue to build on your everyday.
And you throw Walker, who's coming up, with all those guys you just mentioned, with a huge upside. I agree. All the guys you just mentioned, including Burleson, has great upside and may end up being stars. But you can't carry all those guys on a hope. At some point, you're going to have to kind of mix and match or maybe take a couple and send them and bring in some. Can we get to that sound?
Yeah, you ready?
Wilson Contreras?
On what Cardinals fans should know about him.
We let you go. Cardinal fans know about you as a player, but for those that don't, what do you want Cardinal fans who aren't aware of what you bring to the club? What would you want them to know about you?
That I'm really passionate. They're really passionate that I care about the game, about my teammates. It's not about me. It's about my team, and they will know when Wilson Contreras hit the field because I would do, and we play with 120% on my heart, and I leave my heart and soul out there.
I know you're
okay. I kind of like that. I just like that because I mean we don't see a lot of that sometimes from day to day. It's a long season in baseball, and I do agree. Contreras, that kind of guy, brings energy.
Yeah. So I was listening. Our guy David Solomon. He also got all that sound. He got some breakout sound from Mozeliak, and I believe it was Martin Kilcoyne who was doing a lot of the questioning with Mo, and he asked him basically about Jordan Walker, and Mo brought it up, and he wasn't comparing him to Burleson. He was comparing him in the sense of how they looked at Burleson last year, because Burleson was setting the world on fire. You remember this?
Yeah.
But they didn't want to bring him up to be a pinch hitter. And there wasn't, I know it's weird to say there wasn't a spot for him because you did have times where, look, they traded Harrison Bader. Tyler O'Neill only played about 100 games. Dylan Carlson got injured. But also, they thought Burleson was better off getting 5 plate appearances every single night. And even though Jordan Walker is a much better prospect, they look at that the same way. With him, when he comes up, he's playing every day. I'm not going to say he's never going to get sent down again because guys do struggle and get sent down. Look, when Nolan Gorman came up last year, we probably all thought he's never getting sent down again. You never know. The best prospects in baseball can come up and hit 190, and you got to send him back down. But I would think if Jordan Walker tears the cover off the ball in the spring, that he's going to be up here. And Burleson's a guy that we don't know yet what he can do at the big league level. So through all these conversations, we talked about this about a month ago. I have no idea of all these names that we've thrown into a hat. There's been about 7 guys. I have no idea which ones are actually going to be legit, productive, above average major league hitters. But I have very high confidence that the Cardinals have about 8 names that could be really good. And they need about 4 of them to really hit it off, to be the starting outfield and that platoon DH. And when you throw in the bucket all these guys we mentioned, Gorman, Carlson, O'Neill, Jordan Walker, Lars Nootbaar, Juan Yepez, Alec Burleson, who'd I miss? Even a Donovan can throw in there for a corner outfield spot every once in a while, even though I think he's going to be the second baseman. Of those 7 or 8 guys, I have very high confidence that 4 of them are going to be really good, solid players for the Cardinals in 2023.
So I don't put O'Neill in that. There are question marks, but he's, to me, already proven when he's healthy what he can do. Maybe he doesn't replicate the exact numbers. I think he's a really good player if he can stay on the field. And Donovan, I think, is off that because I think, like you just said, second base, but he's got a spot because he can play everywhere. But the rest of the group is a huge amount of group. That's what I'm saying. So just hear me out. It isn't a real trade. It's a theory. But if you could take 2 of those guys, we already have too many because you can't play all of them at once to give them a chance, right? Wouldn't it be smart to take 2 of those guys and trade them to the Pirates, theoretically, for a guy like Reynolds, who you know is more of a certainty and fills the exact need that you have right now? Wouldn't that be a smarter, instead of trying to juggle all those guys, knowing some are going to make it, you just don't have room to play all of them at once?
So here's a good, real quick, sorry, Matt. Here's a real good, I think, comparison, though. So look at what Derek Gould reported of what teams wanted for Sean Murphy, from the Cardinals specifically. It was Nootbaar, it was Graceffo, and who am I missing? The other lefty bat. It was Donovan. So it was Donovan, who was a Gold Glover and a Rookie of the Year candidate. It was Graceffo, who's probably going to be in your bullpen this year, could be a starter down the line, stud prospect, and Lars Nootbaar, who had a great second half, and it seems like everybody in baseball is very high on Lars Nootbaar. That was for 3 years of control for a really good overall catcher. Now, obviously, Brian Reynolds, he's not a catcher, but still, you're talking about 3 years of control. So I think you're discussing a very similar package. Whatever the names are, it's going to be something around the Donovan and Graceffo and Lars Nootbaar package, and that is a lot to give up. But again, you're getting 3 years of a potential all-star, so that's kind of the going rate.
And 3 years is the window that you got to get it done with the build you got of this team right now. And when you look at Arenado's best years, when you look at what's left with Goldschmidt, what I think is going to be a turning point for Contreras even at that point. 3 years is the window. If you're going to make a run with the plan you got in play, you got to go after it. The question I ask is, we've thrown out a lot of names to the point and try to figure out what's possible and what could be moved. What point do you get on this team where there's somebody that you say, I can't do it? Not an untouchable. I don't know if you believe in that or whatnot, but saying, if you're trading for a guy like a Brian Reynolds or anybody else who's around the league that's going to help you to be able to get engaged in this, where you say, I can't do that outside of Goldschmidt, Arenado, they're just not getting traded.
Walker's the only one for me that is, when I say untouchable, I just think he's going to be a stud. So everybody else that we just mentioned, I would be fine in moving 2 to 3 of all of those guys to get a proven 3-year player that can help you right now.
I don't
Reynolds.
think.
Sure.
Yeah.
I kind of, that's my whole point, is that, and I hate to be the guy that, well, I don't, you're calling for him to be traded. No, I'm not, because I think all of these guys could be really good. But you got so many pieces now. If you have to give away some to get one guy who's a better fit, who's already a proven commodity, that there's less of a wait and see attitude. I agree. Walker's a guy I wouldn't part with. Maybe even Graceffo based on their needs down the road. But they got enough other pieces that I think could get that done, or a move like that.
And different teams have different asks. I do think, though, like, you understand why the Cardinals didn't make the move for Murphy with that ask. And remember, we're all talking about acquiring a left-handed bat, and Brian Reynolds is switch. But if you have to give up Donovan and Nootbaar, well, then you're giving up 2 lefty bats to get your 1 lefty bat. That is proven, but still, the Cardinals are in a good spot because as we mentioned the names, they have 3 lefties that have already been decent, at least for 1 year or so, big league hitters. They have 2 switch guys in Carlson and Edman that you're very high on, but still they have to do it year after year. Edman's been pretty good, man. Let's be real. Edman, I don't think we should throw him in the same category.
No, he's their shortstop.
He's been pretty
and
dang
he's gonna
solid.
be good there.
And then Burleson is another lefty, so that's what? That's 6 guys if you include the switch hitters. You have 6 guys that you probably feel pretty good about. We don't know what Burleson's going to do, but I think the Cardinals would love to see what he can do out there because he did tear it up last year.
And the
in
difference
AAA.
with Murphy, though, is you're in the talks with the A's, and you can give up no players and get Contreras if you tack on that 5th year, and you have money to spend, so you're going to spend it on Contreras. There's not a guy like that in terms of a lefty bat right now that you're going to get that I know of that you're just going to drop some coin on and suddenly have it.
Nothing that's going to be an impact to that level. So I mean, sometimes you got to pay to play up for where you're at. I mean, the only person I can think of that's out there that you would get engaged with something like that would be a Brian Reynolds. And if he's and you also got to look around and see what other people that could be playing in that same sandbox are willing to do as well. So you look at the fact that the Dodgers lost a Cody Bellinger, so now they've got a need out there. The Yankees are always in play for pretty much anything, and they've been on the record saying they want to add 2 outfielders. So who are you competing with? What does that look like? And, the Pirates come out and they say, well, that's nice, but we're not trading them. Yes, you are. Yeah. You've traded everybody that's played for your team since Barry Bonds and Bobby Bonilla were there. Eventually, everybody's got a price for you if you're in Pittsburgh, especially guys that are going to be due money eventually.
Another guy I've heard, just in a couple different articles, but it's just another name to have fun and throw out there with the Reynolds.
Mike Trout.
No.
Okay.
It's Cedric Mullins from the Orioles.
Yes.
Now, he did not have a great year this past year. He had a really good 2021, but he's a similar story. He's not as proven, but he's a guy you'd have for 3 years of control. He's not a free agent until 2026. He was 137 OPS plus in 2021. He was an all-star. He was 9th in the MVP. He was Silver Slugger. He's a lefty bat. He's a guy that plays center field, and that's a name you've heard out. You just wonder with the Orioles. The Orioles are trying to win, kind of. Like, they got close last year, but they sold. Okay, but they sold a little bit at the deadline. They moved Trey Mancini. So you wonder, are the Orioles still maybe looking at more 2024 to really stake their claim? And if so, do they trade a Mullins for 2 to 3 pieces? That's just another name I've seen written about the last several weeks.
That's a good name, and I would think that the Orioles would be tougher to turn some with, or because you'd have to give a lot more, because I get the sense that, especially a guy they have control for a while, they don't want to take a step backwards, where the Pirates seem to not care much about anything.
Ever.
I think that the Adley Rutschman emergence last year moved things along for them a little bit, and some of the guys that you drafted and put into play, the Orioles that started to pay out, like they started to sell a bit and they got better. So, I mean, you go into this offseason, they're actually spending a little bit of coin on them. The Orioles have always been a team I don't quite understand. I mean, you talk about competitive balance, though, in baseball, because I remember back in the 90s, and I believe the same ownership group as you had around that time, they were in on everybody. Yeah. I mean, they were spending money. They were spending coin just as recently as the Chris Davis deal. I don't know if they're scarred by how that played out.
Probably are.
But the Orioles have got the coin to get in the game anytime they want to, you would think. But, Cedric Mullins would check. That's everything that you need. So, I mean, but that's the same profile as you're looking at a Brian Reynolds, though. So it's really clear what the Cardinals need is a multi-skilled center field type. Maybe you think the Rays might send a certain outfielder back to St. Louis if you ask really nice?
Do you know that there's
same package?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a commissioner's memo that goes out to every major league team that says, on the day when a big-ticket free agent is signing on the dotted line, no one is allowed to mention the name Chris Davis because it could cause a heart attack or some sort of mental issue.
Uproar.
Do you guys buy this at all? Our old buddy John Heyman, Mr. Arson Judge, Mr. Aaron Judge.
Did Arson sign yet, or are we still waiting to see
Well,
what
he didn't
happens
sign
with
with the old San Francisco Giants.
Yeah.
Giants fans will probably never forgive John Heyman. Do you believe the Cardinals mystery team on Carlos Rodon?
No. And I just saw Mo. I guess he was talking to KMOX. I just saw a quote where Mo said, a lot of the stuff you're reading don't believe. And I think he's probably addressing the big ticket stuff that's still out there.
So Carlos Rodon, this is according to Spot Track, he's projected to get a 6-year deal for $195 million. Now remember, these projections for the big deals have been way low.
Yeah.
Because these teams, like the Mets and the Padres specifically, their way around the competitive balance tax is essentially we're going to give so many years. We don't even care if we have to cut the dude the last 2 years, but we're going to get our AAV down so we don't have to pay as much for the competitive balance tax. So I now think Carlos Rodon is going to get north of $200 million. And this is a guy who's really talented, but he's really only been healthy and good for 2 years. But in this market, he's probably going to get $250 million plus.
Does that strike you as the kind of what you just laid out, the kind of deal that the Cardinals are going to be in on? Not to me.
I say no. I do think they need a guy like that because this offseason, I think the Cardinals should also start to address the fact that they have 4 holes in their rotation for next year. Yeah. Now, I do think we saw Miles Mikolas sign that extension after his first good year. Mm-hmm. Remember, Miles Mikolas had another good year last year. Mm-hmm. This is the perfect time for his agent to go to the Cardinals because he's entering his last season and say, hey, how about a nice little 2-year extension? Good for both parties. That gives you a little certainty beyond 2023. I could see that happening. Let's say that happens. So now you got Mikolas.
I think that's likely.
Right, I would bet on that happening. Yeah. So let's say you have Matz and Mikolas, and who knows down the road whether it's a Graceffo. I mean, could you bring Dakota Hudson back into the rotation in 2024? Will he still be here? Yeah. My point is more so, I don't think John Mozeliak wants to enter the winter, entering the 2024 season, having to fill 4 starting rotation spots.
I think he said as much. I mean, with this in a very Mo way. I mean, he made it very clear that that's a focus point, and he acknowledges that's a thing. When you look at who's left out there, let's move Rodon out because if where he's at, with the 2 guys who I think are above the board on him, and DeGrom and Verlander, who are very different caliber of pitchers, I think by track record at least, not age, averaging $40 million a year between the 2 deals that they've signed, he would be a fool. A fool to do anything south of 35 per in the position that he's in right now. So then you start looking at Chris Bassett, Nathan Eovaldi, Noah Syndergaard. You know, I mean, you're definitely down a cut now due to the fact that there's been a big rush on signing pitching. So what pitching is out there to acquire otherwise? What can you trade?
Pablo Lopez.
If that option is there.
That actually, to me, that's a name, and it also feels like a Cardinals move. You get a proven, controllable pitcher. He's making nice money, but not crazy money. That just really feels like a smart John Mozeliak type move.
I love him. I think I'm totally on board if that were the case. I'd also say with Dakota Hudson, didn't have a good year last year, and still 8-7. I know no one cares about win-loss record anymore.
Wins don't matter, Cat. Remember,
I kind of still do. But that was like his first blemish. Like he's had injuries and everything. He's not too far removed from a 16-7, 3.35 ERA. I know he gives up a lot of walks and control. This is still a guy who's developing, and his stuff is really good when he's right. I was surprised to see them talking about him, you know, getting to the plate quicker and taking too much time, because I always thought he was like a little beyond that in terms of the mentality of the game. But I know they still like his stuff and still think that there's a good starter in there somewhere, whether or not they can get that in there. But look at his career numbers. I mean, outside of injuries, Dakota Hudson has been good. And I think people are ready to write him off because he had some bad moments last year.
The Cardinals have got some really interesting paths ahead of them as far as their starting rotation, as retaining it even, and figuring out what it's going to be in 24. I don't think anybody's under the thought process that Jack Flaherty's resigning anything anytime soon. You've got Jordan Montgomery, who's in a little bit of a, what's this going to be? How's this going to work out? You know, is that a guy that considers saying, hey, I like it here, I want to pitch here? Do you approach him this spring? I don't think that'd be a bad idea to go after and see what you've got there.
I think you got to see what he's going to bring this season.
I don't know if it would necessarily be in his best interest to do it either, but I think if I'm the Cardinals, you have the conversation at least just to know what you're dealing with going forward. But, you know.
And I also think with Flaherty, I think he's eager to give somebody a hometown discount.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and You just looked at me like
somebody. I was to say we could say it, and
I don't.
We could say the name. I don't know if it's going to be the
That would
name
be the
that we're
Dodgers.
talking about.
Jack
And that would be
Flaherty.
95% of market value. That's the discount, not 100.
Jack Flaherty is a businessman.
Yeah, first and foremost.
I like him. I've always liked Jack Flaherty. When he's healthy, he's dominant, but we'll see.
My thing about it is I think that Jack Flaherty is going to go out and have an incredible season, first of all. If he's healthy and he's good to play, he's got more incentive than anybody on this team to go out and have an incredible season. And I think it puts the Cardinals in a position where, I mean, you can't deal them in the middle of that. You're trying to win. You need it. So, I mean, you just say, hey, listen, you got to get the most you got there, and then it is what it is.
He would love to be in that position, too.
Oh,
he would love to
God,
be in that
yeah.
position.
Text line 855-282-8255. Kyle says the only good number from Dakota Hudson is his ERA. Every other stat shows a guy that is a fringe major league starter. Gio and O'Fallon.
2019, he was good. You can look at whatever metrics you want. The results were good.
Gio and O'Fallon, I'd be absolutely fine with a Pablo Lopez trade.
Yeah.
Joe Boo's Rum, guys, get Kiz to recruit his former teammate Rodon. We need an ace. I agree, but I don't think the Cardinals are going to pay that ticket. Kyle says Mo also said on Camo X that they're more in the trade market at this point, and he said that any addition to the staff would mean that they'd have to shuffle the staff around. Joe Boo's Rum, guys, maybe I'm missing something, but why are the Cardinals not talking up Moises Gomez for possible outfield spot this upcoming season? The dude is 24 years old and hit 39 homers in the minors last year. What am I missing here? He's O'Neal, but seems healthy.
Listen, I think that the outfield competition, even if you added a piece to it externally, is going to be all over the place in the best way possible this spring. I think you're going to go in with 6 guys looking for at-bats and looking for a way to prove that they've got it. I think that that's a phenomenal place to be in.
Yeah,
All right,
but if you have all these guys, and who knows, all of them could be good, you're not going to have room for them.
No.
Okay, so you're not going to have room at the major league level. It'll be crowded at AAA. Guys fighting. Maybe you'll have injuries. What I'm saying is if you package up a couple of these guys and get a guy, like Reynolds, who is a better fit right now for what the Cardinals need, do you look at that?
Let me ask you then, did you think that we just talked about Chris Davis and the Orioles being maybe a little big contract gun shy? Do you think that the way that some of the trades that the Cardinals have made them be a little bit more conservative on how they trade people out now?
Like, what do you mean?
Like
Alcantara,
Yeah,
100%.
Alcantara, they moved out.
Rosarena.
Yeah, Rosarena,
100%.
Gallen, things like that. When you look and see what you've given out, now you talk about what you need and you don't have it. Do we feel like the Cardinals have gotten a bit more trade conservative and saying what they want to include in deals like that?
I really don't think so, because one of the things the Cardinals do, I know that no one likes to look bad when someone goes somewhere else and blossoms. But if you look at some of those trades when they were made, they were to fill immediate needs, okay? They had to be made. And I think they're in a situation now where, look, you can say, well, one of these guys is going to go somewhere else and be a star, but if you can pick up a guy who helps you now and for 3 years and you're able to bolster your lineup now, those are the risks. And I think the Cardinals might be willing to do that. Might.
I think, though, if you look at John Mozeliak, name me a bad trade from John Mozeliak for the first about 10 years. Do any come to mind? Honestly, a bad trade. It's really hard to think of one until Rosarena, Alcantara, and those have been, let's be real, those have been bad. This isn't what we talk about with the Blues where you flip Tage Thompson, who's going to be a stud, but you get a cup, and you get Ryan O'Reilly. That's a fair trade. Nobody looks at that trade and says, oh, somebody got fleeced. No, it actually helped out both teams. For the first 10 years, I can't think of a bad John Mozeliak trade at all. And now there's been 2, let's be real, that are pretty dang bad.
Well, also, when you look at the window of time you got there, back in the time period you're talking about in the first 10 years, the big criticism of Mo and the Cardinals was that they don't trade prospects. They don't get rid of anybody. They hoard prospects. Then the guys get here, and maybe they don't end up being what you want them to be. Then they made an about face and realized that they probably had to go in a little bit different direction and went too far in some cases. But also, if you go back in time, Sandy Alcantara wasn't the Cy Young winner when they traded him. It wasn't like they made the decision between him and Flaherty essentially on what was going to go into that deal, and they decided to hold what they did. And it's hard to argue with the decision that got made at that time. I mean, even Luke Weaver was a guy that was logging rotation innings when they sent him out in the deal that got rid of him, and Zach Gallen nearly looked like a toss-in at the time. So it's hard to say it, and I think that they realized that maybe. Yeah, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't in some cases. But right now, you've got a glut of guys who are either 4A guys that need to play in the major leagues, or you just don't have space for them. So I think they're more primed than at any other point that Mosaic's been at the helm to package together guys to get in an impact option for the team.
And I'll be the first one to say, I was a fan at the time of the Marcell Ozuna trade. I'm not going to be a hypocrite, but I'm also not paid to make those choices. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we are paid to analyze the choices.
Right, but the Cardinals, those guys are experts in their field because they need to know better than anybody. Even if the dude's 19, even if the dude's 20, and he's only pitched in the bigs 17 times in a relief role, the Cardinals need to know the ceilings of their prospects better than anybody else. And again, I think we're being fair in the fact that we say, for 10 years, John Mozeliak didn't make a bad trade. He flipped Brett Wallace for Matt Holliday when Brett Wallace still had value, and then Brett Wallace had no value. Mm-hmm. But it's also fair to mention that there's been some good trades, by the way, still in recent years.
Just made a couple last year.
But Alcantara, Gallen, that's one where even though you needed that bat, you needed at the time Marcell Ozuna, but now we're talking about filling rotation holes, and those are two guys that you'd love to have in your rotation for 8 years.
Sure.
And look at the deal Alcantara signed. He signed the most team-friendly deal you've ever seen.
Yeah,
and he's a Cy Young winner.
And with the Rosarena, too, like the Cardinals at some point had to settle in on who their outfielders are going to be. And they went with Bader and O'Neill. And for a while, as good as a Rosarena has been, those look like really good options. Like,
sure.
But Bader
was riding high at that time.
I still think Bader is going to be really good as a Yankee. I think he's the best. I think he's the best defensive center fielder. He was in the National League, and now he'll be in the American League. I think he's a difference maker just with his defense. Mm-hmm. And you can see it on line drives to the gaps. And I think Carlson is good. I think he'll get better. But I don't think it's close to what Bader brought. And I do think Bader's offense will come around.
So do you think that Jordan Walker's purpose when he gets here, I don't think it's going to take very long into the season. I don't know if it's opening day or whatever, but I don't think it's going to be too far behind then. Is his purpose to be an everyday outfielder or to be somebody that's a part of the DH picture?
I think DH, and they'll try to get as much as they can. If he makes the team, it's up to him to have a good spring.
Sure.
I don't think that die has been cast yet. But I believe that they want him to get a lot of at-bats if he's going to be here, and they'll figure that out.
So do we think that Jordan Walker then is a significant enough part of the plan that it keeps the Cardinals from making other moves because to keep space open for him to contribute?
Yes. Big offensive moves, yes.
So that's the thing that I look at. I look at Gorman. When Gorman came up, Gorman didn't get necessarily the frequency of at-bats that I think he needed in order to stay getting acclimated to the majors and doing that. So, and I also don't think that there's any reason to be out on Nolan Gorman's potential at all, and I don't think the Cardinals are. But I think that you got to be able to put the pressure on making sure that he gets at-bats too. So that's where I just kind of struggle to say, if you bring something in, where's the option at? Or he's got to go out as a part of it because it's not going to be Walker.
That I agree, and that's what I'm saying. You might have too many pieces to try to accomplish what you're talking about, getting them work at the major league level. Mm-hmm. You might not have enough room for all. Burleson deserves it too. They got a lot of guys like that who have tremendous upsides, who may well end up as stars. Can they get them all there by working them into the major league rotation? There's not room for all of them. And I honestly think like a guy like Gorman, he wasn't great at second base. He had obviously some shortcomings. To me, if you can get, I would rather Donovan be the piece that moves all the way around. I'd be fine with Donovan at second base, may well end up there, and I think that's fine. But if you can get a bat with the power that Gorman has, and he becomes something, and he's your second baseman, I think that would be the path that I'd like to see traveled the most.
Another thing about Walker is he's a superb athlete. He has a 100-mile-per-hour arm, and I also don't think, look, it's about at-bats, but I don't think the Cardinals want to take their brightest talent since Tavares and immediately turn him into a big league DH. I really don't think that helps his development. I don't think you now everybody's going to DH every once in a while, but I don't think you want to bring up Jordan Walker and say you're our DH for 120 games. I think you want to see him play the outfield
at 21.
Right. Remember, this is a guy who is more likely could be a third baseman down the road. He could be a first baseman. He has a huge arm. He is athletic, but he's a big kid, man. Like he's legit 6'5", 220 and can probably look good at 240. So if he's going to be the power hitter we think, he could be your first baseman 3 years from now.
Yeah, I think he is the heir apparent at first base, personally. I just think that it's about biding the time.
But to me, if you want to get him on that path, and he does play well at spring training, and they're open to having him, then yeah, there's going to be some DH and there's going to be some outfield. To me, the main thing is getting him acclimated to a big league setting where he can make whatever adjustments he's going to make to the way they attack him.